Matthew.
Thanks a lot. Matthew Lee, Intercity Press, on behalf of the Free UN Coalition for Access. Thanks for the briefing. I saw I guess via webcast, I saw you right behind the podium there. So I wanted to, I'm sure that you heard, and maybe you can explain it. Some countries I guess they weren't reservations, but they were requests to Minister Fabius to deal with some issues after the fact. I guess the Africa group had something they wanted clarified. Turkey said something. And I also saw a press conference by NGOs that was pretty critical of the agreement, saying that it's less binding than the previous one, that it's a disappointment on human rights, and this issue of kind of liability, that in a way the developed countries slipped in language to say that this does not involve or provide any basis for liability or compensation for historical role in climate change. So, I mean, obviously there's a positive side which you've expressed, but what do you make of those criticisms, and what is the process on the issues raised by the Africa Group and Turkey and others?
So first of all, it is not a perfect agreement. Let's just be very clear about that. It's a very good agreement. I think we can be happy about it. And when you look around, the responses in the media, and yes, even the responses from the civil society organizations, is on the whole not just positive, but very positive. So we can be happy about that, but it's not perfect. And there are countries, there are groups of interest who did not perhaps get everything that they wanted. What is really important in this agreement, and this is, I think we have to pay tribute to the French diplomatic service in large part for that, because they did an absolutely fantastic job, is that at the end of the day, each of the countries, each of the main groups of countries who negotiated were able to take home something important to them. So that's the positive side. Now, as with any agreement, what is key is that there is an agreement and there is no formal objection raised, and there were no formal objections raised. Now, after any agreement, there are lots of speeches. Most of them tend to be congratulatory because we just adopted an agreement, and some of them are about interpreting certain provisions of the decisions taken by certain countries or groups of countries. And that's exactly what we saw in Paris, and that's perfectly normal. There were some, as you can imagine, before the adoption, there were some rather challenging moments, as there always are in such situations, where some countries were saying, we are going to object if you don't do this. But that's part of the hard work. But this was all resolved, and there were no objections. And yes, there were plenty of statements there were some statements, that were critical of certain aspects. Now, as I said, even from the civil society part, on the whole, the response is very positive. I've been following my Twitter feed very carefully during the last few days, and it is very positive. But everybody recognizes, and this is the Secretary General recognizes this too very clearly, that this is a new era, it's a new regime that is in place, and we have to make it work. And so what really matters is what are we going to do tomorrow morning when we start our program.
I just want to ask one follow-up. This is from, I guess, a U.S. perspective. One of the groups that spoke after the deal was agreed was talking about how this Trans-Pacific Partnership would basically limit the ability of the countries that sign on to it to combat climate change. I don't know if have you looked into this matter at all, that the idea of sort of no country having stronger standards than others that would impact industry may in fact harm the fight against climate change. This was it was a U.S. NGO, so it's very much directed at sort of
Okay, I'm not aware of that. This is going to be an international treaty, so it's a bit different. But I'm not aware of any of that.